Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to InfoGamer. I know it's been a while since I've made a video, and that's because I've been super busy with university. I'm taking a full schedule of classes, and it's spring semester, so everything's condensed and sped up. But I only have about a week and a half left, and then I'll be done, and I'll be able to start enjoying my summer, and I'll be able to start doing more videos. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to do a video right now. And that way, once I finish university, I'll be able to start pumping out videos and do it more consistently. So here we have our project open in Unity, and you can remember from last time that we were able to build our coin pickup function. And I'm going to go ahead and hit play and show you how our game works so far. So here we have our character once it loads. Here we have our character, and if I click, you can see that he can pick up these spherical objects, which are our coins, and I can do our wall jump, and it's pretty awesome. And as we pick up the circles, you can see that our score is incremented. So that was pretty cool, and we were able to do that in our last video. But for this video, the first thing that we want to do is fix a error or a bug that I discovered while playing the game, and it deals with our wall jump function. Now our wall jump function, what it does is it checks to see if the walls that we collide with have a vertical slope. And to show you what I mean, I'm going to use our scene view. So I'm going to select this wall that we've created. Now, right now, this wall has a vertical slope because the rotation is at 0, 0, 0, and this wall has been stretched in the Y direction. So it's a really tall wall, and the sides, if our character was to collide with one of the sides, it would have a vertical slope, or the normal coming off the wall would be equal to 0. Now, what we want to do is rotate this wall. I'm going to rotate it this way. And what this is demonstrating is that this wall has a positive slope, a slope that is greater than 0. And so if our player were to jump and land on this wall somewhere on the left side of the wall and collide with it, we would then not allow our player to do the wall jump function because the slope has a positive value, which is greater than our buffer size, which is 0.1f. Now, if I were to rotate this wall in the opposite direction, like so, and our character were to jump and collide with the left side of the wall, this slope is actually negative. And in our wall jump function, we're actually only checking to see if the wall has a positive slope greater than 0.1f, and if it does, then we don't allow the player to do the wall jump. And so what we want to do is also check to make sure that the wall doesn't have a slope that's less than negative 0.1f. And so to do this, let's go to our player controller script in Visual Studios. So once you have your script open in Visual Studios, I'm going to scroll down to the wall jump function. And here in the wall jump function, you can see this first if condition or if statement that we've created. And the second half of this if statement checks to see if the hit cent.normal.y is less than 0.1f. And so if our slope, or the slope of our wall, has a greater slope than 0.1f, then we don't allow them to do a wall jump. But what happens if that wall has a negative slope less than negative 0.1f? Then we would still allow them to do a wall jump. And I can actually demonstrate this in Unity. So if I hit play, this wall here that I'm going to collide with has a slope that's less than negative 0.1f. And I'm able to jump backwards, which is not good because they shouldn't be able to do a wall jump off of a wall that has that type of slope. And so what we need to do in order to fix this logic error is we're going to copy the second half of the if statement with the ampersands, and we're going to paste it right after this second condition. And then we're going to change it from hit cent.normal.y is less than 0.1f to is greater than negative 0.1f. And that way we're checking both sides of this condition on whether or not the wall has a vertical slope. We're checking to see if it has a slope less than 0.1f or greater than negative 0.1f, which means that the wall will have roundabout a vertical value, a vertical slope. And so once we do that, we can go ahead and hit save, and that should fix the problem. So now we'll allow the players to do normal jumps, but we won't allow them to do wall jumps. So now that we have that logic error fixed, what we want to do for the rest of this video is import the art assets that we have for our main character. This includes a model, a texture sheet, and animations. So I'm going to create a location where we can save these art assets. I'm going to right click on our assets folder, go to create folder, and I'm going to rename this to models. And then on my other screen, I have the location where I have my model and texture sheet. I'm going to select those, click and drag them into our models folder. Once they're imported into Unity, I'm going to go ahead and open our models folder. And here you can see that we have our model and our texture sheet, and then a materials folder which was created by default when we imported these. So here's our model, a really cute Italian chef to replace an Italian plumber for Mario Run. And Charlie was able to model this character and texture him. He's really cute. He's got a rig and animation. So I'm going to go ahead and play through the animations right now. So he's got like a walk, a run, an idle, and a few jump animations. So that's pretty cool. Now what we need to do is start dividing up the animation clip. So when you import your models from a program like Maya or Blender, the animations that you have applied to that model will be in one single clip. And so what we need to do is use the frames of the clip and divide out the individual animations. And before you divide up the animations, you want to make sure that you have the animation tab selected up at the top. So right now I have a list of all the animations that Charlie created and their corresponding frame numbers. And so I'm going to divide up this single animation clip into each individual animation. And so to do this, I'm going to rename this first clip to the neutral pose. So I'm going to type out neutral pose. And then I'm going to specify the frame number, and they have this timeline, and you can click and drag the timeline, or you can change the values of the start and end frame. So this neutral pose is just the first frame. It's a single frame. And then to add another clip, we can click this plus sign underneath the clips option, and that adds a new animation. And then we can rename this one, and this is the walk animation. And it is frames 2 through 25. So I'm going to type those in. Now I'm going to keep adding the animations. There's like 10 animations. And I'm going to speed this part up so you don't have to worry about the time it takes to do it. Alright, so here we have all our animation clips divided up into their individual clip. And now what we need to do is scroll down in the inspector and hit apply. And that will save all the animations into the object. So if we go into our project window and expand our main character object, you can see down here that we have each of our animation clips that we created in the inspector by dividing them up. So now that we have our animations divided up, what we can do is now apply our main character into our scene. So I'm going to click on him and drag him onto our player object. Once he's attached to our player object, we can then go ahead and double click on the character model, not the player object itself, but the character model, which is a child to the player controller object. And here you can see we have him in our scene view, and he's so cute. But he's really small, and so in order to fix that, what we need to do is scale him up so that he's about the same size of our capsule. And to do this, I'm going to actually turn off the mesh renderer of our capsule, and that way we can see him better. And now what we need to do is, in order to scale him up, there's two options. One is the proper way and one is the not so proper way. The not so proper way would be to scale up the object itself in the inspector. But there's a better way to do that, and that is with the model import. So if we click on the model itself in the project window, what we want to do is select the model tab in the inspector. And what we need to do is use this scale factor to scale up the model itself, because when you have a FBX file type, which is what our model is, they're usually really small. And so what we need to do is scale him up, and I'm going to do a little trial by error and say maybe 20, and then what we need to do is hit apply down at the bottom, and that scaled him up. And here we can compare to see if he is about the same size as his collider object, and it looks like he is. So now what we need to do is move him down, because you can see that the center or the pivot of our model is down at his feet. And so that's kind of pushed him up, and he's only like halfway in the collider. And so we want to move him down. And so in the Y position, I'm going to say -1. And then we can compare again. And it now looks like his collider goes to the bottom of his feet and close to the top of his head. And so that's what we want. We want him to fit right inside that collider. So now when I hit play, you can see that our character is in the game and he moves, but he doesn't animate, and that's because we've created the animations but we haven't applied them to our character. And so in order to do this, let's go ahead and select our main character model in the hierarchy, and here you can see that when we added this object to our hierarchy or our scene, it came with an animator component, and the animator component is what we're going to use in order to animate our main character. Now if you don't have an animator component, it's really easy to add one. All you need to do is select the add component button and then go to miscellaneous and then animator, or you can type animator right into the search and it should pop up. Once you have an animator component attached to your model, what we need to do is open the animator window, which I have here, or you can go to window animator and it should pop up like this. So once you have your animator component, we need to create an animator controller to apply to our animator, which is going to hold all the animations. So in order to do this, I'm going to right click in our models folder and then go to create and then animator controller, and that creates this animator controller, and we can say main character controller or an controller. You just want to give it a name that you'll remember that that controller belongs to a specific character or model. Now what we can do is apply this to our main character model. So once I have him selected in the hierarchy, I'm going to select our animator controller and drag it into this first field in the animator component. So now that you have an animator controller applied to your animator component, when you select your main character model in the hierarchy, you'll now see this in your animator window. You'll see any state, entry, and exit. So the animator component of Unity is a lot like what's called a state machine, where each of these boxes is a given state. And our animations will also be a state once we apply them to our animator. And then using those different states, we can set parameters, and if the parameters conditions are set, we can then specify what animation we want to play at a given point in time. So to demonstrate this, let's start applying our animations. So I'm going to find our animations in the project window. I'm going to select all of them at once, so shift click, and then I'm going to drag them into our animator window. And this adds more rectangular boxes. So each of these rectangular boxes is an animation that we created, and they represent a state, a given state. And now we can create what looks like a web of paths, and we can specify which animations we want to play when. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move a lot of these out of the way, and I'm going to select certain ones that I want to use at the moment. So the ones that I want to use at the moment are the idle. So right now what I'm going to do is make sure that the idle is kind of front and center, and then I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to say set as layer default state, and that makes this state turn orange. So on play, this state will be the first to play. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play to demonstrate how the idle animation plays. So here you can see that he's now in a different stance and he moved slightly, but our animation isn't set to looping, and so it only played once. There's certain animations that you're only going to want to play once, like a jump animation, when there's others like an idle or a run or a walk animation, which you're going to want to play in a loop. As long as the state is set to an idle animation or a run animation, you want it to keep playing. So in order to do this, what we want to do is select our main character model in the project window. And in our animations tab, as we select each of our animation clips, we can specify whether we want it to be looping by selecting loop time. And so I'm going to select our walk animation, and I'm going to select loop time, and then I'm going to select our jog, select loop time, our run, loop time, and idle, loop time. The other animations are animations that I would probably only want to play once every instance. So the jump, the fall, and the wall pose, those are ones that I only want to play once through. So now what we can do is go ahead and hit apply, and now as I go ahead and hit play, you can now see our player will do a consistent idle animation. He's got a little twitch in his stance. So that's something that we're going to need to fix, and that's probably dealing with which frames I have selected. So I was able to fix the animation just by changing the start frame to 62 instead of 61, because 61 was maybe a frame in between animations and it had a little jerk motion to it. And so as I changed that, that was able to then fix this animation, and I can play it in this window, and you can see he's got a little blink and his arms move. So cute. Okay, so now what we want to do is go back to our animator window, and we want to create a transition from the idle animation to one of these other animations. So I'm going to do the walk animation. I need to find it. So it's right here. So what we can do now is we can right click on the idle animation and then select make transition. And then as we click on the walk animation, we've now created this linking arrow with the directional arrow pointing from the idle animation to the walk animation. So now that we've created this transition, what's going to happen is, since we haven't created any parameters, this idle animation will play through once, and then it'll go on to the walk animation. And so what we can do now is create a parameter for this transition, so that if the condition of the parameter is set or is true, we will then allow it to transition. Otherwise it will stay in the idle animation state. So let's go ahead and select this parameter tab over in the top left of the animator window, and then we can click this plus sign, and then we can specify what value we want set. And so I'm going to set this equal to float, and then we can specify maybe something like x speed or velocity, x speed. So we give our parameter a name, and then right now it's set to 0. But now that we have this parameter selected, we can now select the transition itself and create a new condition. So over here in the bottom right of the inspector, we can click this plus sign to create a new condition. And by default, it gives us the first parameter, which is x speed. And then we can specify whether we want it to be greater than or less than that value. And so I'm going to say greater than. So for the value of our x speed parameter, what we could say is if it's greater than, let's say 0.2, 0.1, 0.2, 0.5, something like that. And then that means that if our speed is greater than 0.2, then we'll start playing the walk animation. And now what we can do is we can also create an animation to go back to the idle state. So I'm going to right click on our walk animation state, select make transition, and then left click on our idle state. Now what I can do is select our idle state and then specify that the condition is less than 0.2. So if it's greater than 0.2, we're playing the walk animation. If it's less than 0.2, we're idling. What we also want to do for these transitions is make sure that the exit time is turned off, because we don't want the transition to happen as soon as the animation stops playing. So what this means is that any animation state that we're currently in, we're going to stay in the animation state until our condition is met. So I'm going to select the other transition and change that to not having an exit time. So for the last part of this video, what we want to do is add a bit of code to our player controller script. That way we can control our animator component. So I'm going to open our player controller script in Visual Studios. And what we want to do first is up at the top, create a new variable. And this is going to be a public variable, and it's going to be our animator component. So animator. And then we can call this my animator. So now that we have this animator variable, we can now use code to change the parameter values of our animator component, and then therefore change the animations of our character. So the next thing that we want to do is find our speed apply function. So I'm going to scroll down, and here we have where our speed apply function is being called. And if I keep scrolling down, here we can find the actual speed apply function. And this first line of code is where we are applying the forward speed on our main character. And so what I can do now is, after that line of code, is I can use our my animator and then say dot set float, and then here we want to specify our float name. And so we can use quotes, and we can type x speed, and then we want a comma, because this is a function. So the first part is where we specify which parameter we're setting, and the second part is the value that we want to set that parameter to. And so I'm going to set it equal to my controller dot velocity dot x, and then hit semicolon. Let's go ahead and save this, and now we can go back to Unity and see how it works. So in Unity, we want to make sure that we select our player and go to where we created our new variable. So we have our my animator variable, and we want to make sure that we drag the animator from our main character model into that field. Once we've done that, we can now go ahead and hit play and see how it works. So what should happen is when we hit play, in the very instance, it's going to set it to the idle animation. And then, as soon as the parameter for our x speed is set, we will then transition into the walk animation. And if our x speed reaches 0, or our velocity in the x direction reaches 0, then we should go back to the idle animation. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play and test it out. So we have our idle animation. He starts walking, and then we stop, and he goes back to his idle animation. That was pretty awesome. And am I blocking it? I am kind of blocking it. So let us fix that. I'm going to drag out my game window to right. Let's see. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to scroll this up, scale it up, and move it out of the view. Alright, so I'm going to play through this one more time so that you can see it without me blocking in the bottom left corner. So here we hit play. Our character, once he hits the ground, he starts walking, he starts playing his walk animation. As soon as he hits the wall, his velocity reaches 0, and he goes back to his idle animation. I'm going to play it one more time because it's so cool. Alright, he's falling, he's walking, and he stops, he goes back to his idle animation. Pretty awesome. Alright, so in our next video we'll probably be coding more animations. We'll be making more connections, more transitions in our animator, and then in our script we'll be applying the values to the parameters to change the animations. So for instance, when he's falling in that first instance, we could specify what his Y value is, and if it's negative, if he's falling, then we'll specify play one of his fall animations, and so on. It's going to be really cool. So that's everything that we had planned for this video. We hope you enjoyed it. I know the animator component of Unity can be really hard to understand sometimes, but once you figure it out, you'll love it. I love it. It's probably one of my favorite features of Unity, because rather than saying, oh, play this animation here and there, you can just specify the parameters and when you want them to change and how you want them to change, and then Unity will make the transitions between animations all by itself. And so that's really cool. If there was anything in this video that was hard to understand, or if you have any questions, make sure that you leave them in the comments below. Make sure that you like and subscribe, and stay tuned for all our future videos, and we'll see you next time.